despite schools having officially reopened, many children are having to self-isolate at home because a classmate has tested positive for COVID-19. The number of people sent home has quadrupled this month, with more than, look at this, 375,000 off school just in the last week alone.
Well, under pressure, arguably, from frustrated schools and parents, Education Secretary Gavin Williamson said yesterday he wants to scrap the bubble system.
But with no data...
What I want to see is these restrictions, including bubbles, removed as quickly as possible, along with wider restrictions in society. I do not think it is acceptable that children should face greater restrictions over and above those of wider society, especially since they have given up so much to keep older generations safe over the last 18 months.
But with no date given on when bubbles will be scrapped and just weeks to go before the summer holidays, should we just shut schools altogether until September?
Well, joining us now is founder of the Oasis Charitable Trust, which runs a network of 53 schools, Steve Chalk. Good to see you this morning. Head teacher of Manor Primary School in East London, Paul Jackson. Hello there. And mum to 3 children and 2 stepchildren, Catherine Badham. Well, let's come to you first of all then, because you, Catherine, sound like you're at the heart of the pressure of this. I'm sure you don't want your children to be put at risk. I'm sure you don't want your family to be put at risk. But on the other hand, having children constantly sent home from school is bad for everyone, them included, isn't it? So what do you think about the idea of shutting schools now and trying to start all over again in September?
I think it's hideous. It's a terrible idea. We've had 15, 16 months of this chaos, and if my children weren't in school, especially my youngest one, then I work, so I have to cover their childcare. I have to make last-minute arrangements, and the big ones at high school are missing out on the best bit of of school because it's been rubbish this year for them, and the last few weeks are the fun part. So to take that away from them and then to expect parents to somehow magic childcare, which will end up being grandparents or costing a fortune, with 3 weeks to go, just seems absolute madness. The last thing I think our children need at the moment is less school time. They need to stay in school until the end of the term, and then they can sort it all out over the summer holidays and hopefully come back with a better plan for September. But absolutely no way. I think it's a terrible, terrible idea.
So don't shut the schools, as you're saying, but what about the bubble system being scrapped? Because at the moment, that is leading to relatively few number of serious cases, but very, very many youngsters not being in school. Do you still think that's preferable?
The bubble system is going to have to change, isn't it? I don't think that I agree that needs to be scrapped, really. I don't know what the alternative is, but you can't have a class of 30 with 2 with COVID and maybe 2 or 3 catching COVID, and then the rest of them are just at home for 10 days, just waiting until they can go back to school. I thought, and I believe, the whole reason for the very quick vaccination process was to protect the people that were vulnerable, and the older people and people that are working, and they're flying through that. So I don't understand the need to carry on with the bubble situation. Their education has been disrupted enough.
Paul Jackson, let's come to you. I mean, I was surprised by this. You're in the thick of it. You're a head teacher of a school. And you're calling for schools to be closed, at least your school to be closed. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what's been said earlier. We want the children to be here. We want the children to have fun, certainly, well, all of the time, but certainly these last few weeks. But it's far from fun at the moment. It's becoming almost impossible to manage. We've got 2 classes in isolation at the moment because of 2 positive cases. And that's taken 10 members of staff out of the equation as well. And that's making things not far off impossible to operate. Under the pressures that we're under, trying to deliver what should be quite normal. Ofsted are out operating again. We're trying to prepare for September, but we don't quite know what September looks like. And obviously, we're trying to do all of the end of term things that we want to do. We had our sports day yesterday, but sadly, 2 classes missed out on that because of being in isolation. And it's just becoming incredibly hard. The school's workforce are working their absolute socks off. And sadly, there's a bit of a perception that some schools were closed down over lockdown. They certainly weren't. The vast majority were open, doing the very best they could for all children, online, for vulnerable children, key worker children. And so we need to be able to operate safely. And my worry is that with the depletion of staff, kind of how much longer can we actually operate?
The problem is, Paul, isn't it, is that I think there's no doubt that it's been unbelievably difficult for schools to try and deal with the constant confusion, some of the lack of clarity, just in the pandemic in general, and then certainly in the advice they've been given on how to operate. And already this is the point of the year when teachers are on their knees, aren't they, desperate for a little bit of a break. However, the whole point of the system and of sending youngsters home was to keep people safe. And we are seeing cases in younger people going up. We are seeing concern that they could still pass infection on to other youngsters and to other vulnerable members of the family. So the fact that it's hard shouldn't necessarily mean that it's scrapped, should it?
No, children's safety has got to be our absolute priority, but we've also got to make sure that our workforce is safe and well. There's the whole saying around kind of our own oxygen masks before others. The school's workforce didn't get a break last summer. We were preparing for an unpredictable year, and this coming September is unpredictable again. We don't know what it looks like. Yes, I think there should be an amendment.
You want the schools to close so that teachers can have more time? Because I suspect a lot of businesses which are trying to deal with this challenge will be saying, well, you've already got 6 weeks to prepare for September. Why do you need another 3 weeks on top of that? They might not understand that argument.
I totally agree. We can't choose. School staff can't choose when to have a break. School staff can't choose when to recover emotionally, mentally, physically, and it's been an incredibly tough year. I'm saying that I think we should close early. I don't know whether it should be now, but certainly kind of given a bit of time. A school member of staff could be in school over the next few weeks, and they could come into contact very easily with a positive case with just a couple of days to go. And that wipes out the first 10 days of their recovery time. And yes, absolutely, staff will prepare over the summer, but the school staff force are absolutely on their knees. We want to be at our best and our strongest to give the children the very best that we can. Right. And at the moment, we can't do that.
OK, let's speak to Steve Chalk. Steve Chalk is founder of the Oasis Charitable Trust, which has 52 schools. Now, to demonstrate the variety of views and opinions on this subject, Steve, you think that schools should be staying open throughout the summer. Is that right?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, I do. It's not that I disagree with what Paul has said about the pressure on school staff, but I think we have to keep schools open, not just for these next 3 or 2.5 weeks or whatever remains of term. It's a long time, but we need to provide, and our schools do provide and will provide activities through the summer. I also agree with the Secretary of State, that little clip at the beginning, you know, when Gavin Williamson says children shouldn't be disadvantaged more than anyone else. But the problem is, if you believe that, we need decisions now. I think that Paul's problem is simply the bubble system and the guidance from government does stretch schools very thin. We've sent many bubbles home. Yesterday, as I think you said, there were 375,000 children not in school. 5,000 of those were our students. 15% of our entire cohort of children across the country weren't in school. But a very small percentage of those had actually tested positive. I spoke with a dad in Manchester, actually. I spoke with a dad who rang me up and he was in a terrible state because his son had been sent home. He is on a 0 hours, really low paid job. He's having to be at home to be with his son, which means he's not working. So he's worried about the rent on their flat. He's worried about their food. He's at his wit's end about losing his job and being counted out. But he needs to be at home with his son. He's given his son a lateral flow test 5 days running. On all 5 days, it's come up as negative, but the child can't go back. And I understand Paul's schools like ours are a bit denuded of staff. But what we need is a plan now. You know, the other day, we all said, didn't we, England played with vision for once. They were on the ball, they pushed it forward fast. So whereas Gavin Reid says we need a plan, well, we need a plan now, because it matters now.
Can I just ask you just very, very quickly, just on this? The thing about here is protecting children long term. There's lots of conversations about vaccines for children. In your situation, Steve, do you support, at this point, would you support vaccines for children in your schools?
Yeah, I think there's two different things. In our primary schools, we've always been told that the virus has very little impact on primary school children. And the point's already been made. Adults are all vaccinated, aren't they? So I think our primary schools are fine. Our primary schools went back. First time over a year ago, we've not seen any serious cases in our primary schools. We are told, however, that secondary school children can be impacted. So why don't we make the plan of starting to vaccinate our secondary children now? If we did that over the next few weeks, the vaccine takes 3 weeks to take effect. By September, we'd be in a COVID-safe place, and we could have a proper beginning to the next academic year. Think ahead. Think with vision. Get on the ball now. That's my message to you.
OK, thanks for joining us. Steve Chalk, founder of Oasis Charitable Trust, Paul Jackson, head teacher at Manor Primary School, and thank you as well, Catherine Badham, a parent of children at school at the moment. Thank you so much, all three of you, for joining us. I think that is the real question, isn't it, about getting children vaccinated, whether are there enough vaccines at the moment to do that in the next 3 or 4 weeks?
And some people don't feel comfortable about it.
They don't feel comfortable.
You know, you're not making a decision on behalf of yourself as an adult, are you? You're making a decision on behalf of a child that isn't necessarily in the place to make that decision.
But we could end up in a situation where our children are the only ones that aren't vaccinated in the country.